A few months ago, I lost my job. I was 32 and feeling lost in the city. I decided to take a weekend hike in the Appalachian Mountains. I thought some time in nature would clear my head. I parked at a quiet trailhead surrounded by tall pines. The air was crisp, and it felt good to be away from everything. I started my hike, taking photos of the trees and streams. It felt peaceful at first, but as I went deeper into the woods, I noticed an old wooden signpost. It was covered in vines and had strange symbols carved on it. I felt a spark of curiosity but quickly brushed it aside. I reassured myself it was just part of the trail's history. After a few hours, I started to feel uneasy. At first, it was just a rustling I couldn't figure out. I glanced back and saw nothing. I told myself it was probably a small animal. But then I saw a shadow flicker at the edge of my vision. I stopped and turned, but again, there was nothing. My heart started to race a bit and my throat felt dry. I continued hiking, hoping to shake the feeling of being watched. I kept telling myself it was silly. Still, every step made the sensation grow. I found items scattered along the path. A child's stuffed animal lay in the dirt, stained and dirty. I picked it up, chills running down my spine. Who would leave this here? I looked around, expecting someone nearby. Just emptiness greeted me. Further ahead, I saw a broken compass. Its needle spun wildly. I felt a knot in my stomach. Why were these items here? Something felt wrong. I couldn't shake the idea that these things belonged to someone long gone. The silent woods held their memories. I quickened my pace, feeling the eyes of the forest on my back. I heard whispers, just whispers, but they were enough to send shivers down my spine. I turned quickly, hoping to see who was there, but nothing. It was like the trees were alive, craving answers I couldn't provide. As darkness began to fall, I knew it was time to head back. My heart raced and I glanced over my shoulder. The woods felt heavy with silence. I left with more questions than answers. Those symbols on the signpost haunted me. What had happened to the kids connected to the lost items? With each step I felt the woods closing in. As I reached my car, the stillness of the night surrounded me. But just as I was about to relax, I heard a soft giggle behind me. I turned in a panic, but nobody was there. All that remained was the rustle of leaves and the weight of secrets I would never understand. The mountains had their mysteries, and I had stumbled right into their depths. I barely slept that night. I tossed and turned, my mind replaying every moment of the hike. I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest had something to tell me, something I had missed. The child's stuffed animal and broken compass kept appearing in my thoughts. Who were they connected to, and why had they been left behind? The next morning I decided to go back. I didn't want to, but I needed answers. My coffee did little to banish the lingering dread, but I packed some snacks and a flashlight. This time I kept my phone handy for anything that might come up. Armed with a little more courage, I headed back to the mountains. The weather was overcast, making the woods feel more eerie. As I parked at the trailhead, the shadows seemed deeper and more sinister. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the trail. Each crunch of leaves beneath my boots echoed in the silence. When I reached the old signpost again, the symbols seemed to loom larger, more vivid in the dim light. I took a picture, hoping to research their meaning later. As I moved past it, unease settled in my stomach like a heavy stone. The rustling followed me again, but I pushed it aside. I ventured deeper into the woods, searching for clues. The air was thick, and my breaths felt shallow. I reached the area where I found the stuffed animal. It was gone. Confusion washed over me. I wanted to believe someone had come to collect it, but something told me that wasn't the case. That's when I spotted it. A flash of color against the earthy browns of the forest floor. A small tattered blanket lay draped over a log. I approached cautiously, my heart beating faster. As I got closer, I saw several more items scattered around. A toy car, a worn-out teddy bear, and a few faded photographs, their edges curled. I picked up one of the photos. It showed 3 smiling children standing in front of a cabin. My stomach twisted. I felt I was intruding on a grave memory. I flipped it over, but there was no name or date. "Who are you?" I whispered, hoping for an answer, but the woods offered no reply. The whispers were louder now, almost like distant laughter. Panic surged through me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the children were still here somehow, that something had happened to them, and they wanted me to know. I took a step back, my eyes darting around. It felt like shadows were moving closer. I spun around, half expecting to see figures peering out from the trees, but nothing. Just the woods, holding their secrets tight. Just as I was about to leave, I heard something, a branch snapping behind me. I turned quickly. My pulse quickened. Then everything went silent. The air felt thick with tension. I was not alone. I turned back to the items. Wild thoughts raced. Was this their last resting place? Were they lost forever? Then I noticed something shiny at the edge of the clearing, partly buried in the leaves. That glint drew my attention, pulling me toward it. I could barely breathe as I knelt down to uncover it. As I dug it out, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a small locket, tarnished but beautiful. I opened it, heart pounding, and inside was a picture of a girl. And then I realized, this girl looked just like the one in the photograph. I dropped the locket back into the leaves, a sense of dread swelling within me. I finally understood. I had not stumbled upon an innocent mystery. Something dark was woven into these woods, and I had no idea what I had unleashed. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the locket, the image of the girl branding itself in my mind. It wasn't just a locket. It felt like a key to a darker story. I wanted to scream, to call out for help, but my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I took a step back, searching for some semblance of safety. Then I sensed it again, the rustling. Not just in the branches this time. It was like footsteps, faint but unmistakable. I spun around, scanning the trees that loomed above me. The whispers seemed to punctuate the silence, becoming clearer, more insistent. What was happening? I wanted to run, but my legs felt like they were rooted in place. The debris around me, the toys, the blanket, felt charged with energy, as if they were alive and watching. That's when I saw it. A figure peeked out from behind a thick tree trunk. It was small, no taller than a child. My instincts screamed to flee, but curiosity anchored me in place. The figure hesitated before stepping out into the dim light. It looked like the girl from the locket, with tangled hair and wide, dark eyes that seemed far too old for her youthful face. "Help us," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "What do you mean?" I managed to stammer, heart racing. I couldn't tell if she was real or a figment of my panicked mind. The girl's eyes darted back toward the shadows, a flicker of fear passing over her. "You shouldn't be here. They don't want you to know." "Who doesn't?" I asked, taking a small step closer despite the warning signals blaring in my head. But before she could answer, the woods erupted with noise. A loud cracking sound filled the air, followed by the rustle of leaves and snapping twigs. I felt a surge of panic. Maybe it was my imagination, but it felt as if something was moving toward us, closing in. "Run!" the girl screamed suddenly, her eyes wide with terror, before she turned and dashed deeper into the trees. I hesitated for a moment, heart pounding in my chest. Should I follow her? Or was this the trap that led to trouble? The sound of branches breaking grew louder, urgent. I wasn't ready to find out what was hunting us. Taking a deep breath, I sprinted after her. Each footfall felt like the pounding of a drum, echoing in the silence around us. The underbrush was a blur, and I could barely keep my eyes on where I was going, but the girl was guiding me. I struggled to keep up. Suddenly I skidded to a stop. Ahead, the girl had vanished into the shadows. I looked around, panic replacing the adrenaline. Had she truly been there, or was I losing my grip on reality? "Hello?" I called out, voice trembling. No answer, just the rustle of leaves and the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. Then it hit me. I was utterly alone, lost among the trees. But as my anxiety heightened, I caught a glimpse of something bright just beyond the trees. Another flash of color. I made my way toward it, heart racing. That gleam was impossible to ignore. But as I reached it, everything went still. What lay before me felt even more forbidden than the scattered items I had left behind. It was another small clearing, but this one held a chilling secret. A circle of stones lay at its center, and something darker had taken root there. I stepped back, but it felt too late. I realized I had stumbled upon something far worse than I ever imagined. The forest had opened its mouth, and I was standing right at the edge. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, feeling the damp earth beneath me, cool and unyielding. Panic gripped me as I quickly pushed myself up, blinking against the darkness that surrounded me. The clearing was now cloaked in shadow, the stones mere outlines against the moonlit sky. I struggled to catch my breath, confused and disoriented. "Where did she go?" I muttered to myself, grappling with the reality that the girl had vanished into thin air. My heart was still racing. The rustling had subsided, but tranquility did not settle in its place. It only deepened my dread. I scanned my surroundings, desperate for any sign of movement, any glimmer of hope. Instinctively, I crept forward towards the circle of stones. They were oddly arranged, both ancient and foreboding. I noticed something unusual about the ground inside the circle. It was bare, as if whatever had been there had been violently removed. I hesitated, suddenly aware of a weight pressing down on my chest. That's when I heard it. A soft giggle echoed from somewhere deeper in the trees. I froze. It was childlike, innocent even, but laced with an unsettling undertone that made my skin crawl. I strained to listen more closely, trying to pinpoint its source. "Help us," the voice whispered again, clear as day. A shiver ran down my spine. It sounded just like the girl's voice, but there was something deeper and darker now. I instinctively took a step back, ready to retreat from the circle, but it felt as though the stones held me captive, a magnetic pull keeping me rooted in place. Then the shadows shifted. Figures flickered at the edge of my vision, more children, emerging from the darkness. I blinked hard, adrenaline pumping through my veins. They glared at me with hollow eyes. The tangles of their hair reflected moonlight, giving them an eerie glow. They beckoned me closer, their hands outstretched. "Come play," they called in unison, their voices sweet as honey yet saturated with malice. "No!" I shouted, fighting the urge to run but unable to step forward either. My pulse quickened, and I felt that something was terribly wrong. I heard whispers rising around me, a low chorus of voices chanting in unison, words I couldn't quite make out but that reverberated in my bones. Suddenly, a deafening crash erupted from somewhere within the trees. Something had fallen, shaking the ground beneath my feet. The children flinched, their faces morphing from curiosity to sheer panic. "Run!" one of the figures screamed, and in an instant they vanished into the shadows. My instincts kicked in. I had to get out of there. I turned on my heel and sprinted, dodging branches and underbrush as I raced away from the clearing. Every sound felt amplified. The crunch of leaves, the whisper of wind, the thud of my heart pounding in my ears. But there was no sense of direction. The trees closed in around me, towering and impenetrable. Suddenly, I stumbled and fell to the ground, scraping my hands against the rough bark of a fallen tree. As I struggled to get up, I caught a glimpse of the locket still clutched in my hand. I could see my own reflection flickering in its surface. But behind me, something began to move. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. The whispering returned, surrounding me as I faced the darkness that writhed just outside the edge of sight. I knew in that moment something was waiting for me to turn around fully, to face whatever horror the forest had unleashed. Then everything went cold. My breath came in shallow gasps as I stared into the darkness, unsure of what lay beyond the tree line. The whispers grew louder, slithering into my ears and twisting around my thoughts. I forced myself to focus, to think clearly despite the panic flooding my mind. I needed to move. With trembling hands, I pushed myself off the ground, feeling the dampness of the earth sticking to my palms. I scanned my surroundings quickly. The trees seemed to pulse in the moonlight, shadows dancing like phantoms. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, lurking just beyond my sight. Taking a step backward, I stumbled over a branch and fell again. This time I felt a surge of frustration and fear. I had to find a way out of this nightmare. My instincts screamed at me to run again, but the last thing I wanted was to blindly charge into the unknown. I had to think. That's when I remembered the locket. It had to mean something. Bringing it closer to my face, I inspected it, hoping for some clue. The chain glimmered in the moonlight, but it was the engraving on the back that caught my eye. It said, "For those who seek the forgotten." A chill ran through me. What did that mean? I had no time to ponder further. I heard another rustling sound nearby, louder this time, and I froze. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that hung thick in the air. Before I could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was small and delicate, no taller than my waist. The girl from before. My heart leaped at the sight of her, but dread quickly followed. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the moonlight, but her smile didn't reach them. "Help us," she whispered again, her voice strained with urgency. Where are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Here." She pointed behind her, deeper into the trees. "We're waiting." My instinct screamed at me not to follow. I didn't know what "we" meant or who else lurked in the dark, but part of me was desperate to understand, to find a way out of this nightmare. "Please," she insisted, her voice cracking. "They need your help." There was a pull in her words that I couldn't shake. I hesitated, weighing my options. The clearing behind me felt like a trap. The children's faces haunted my mind, and I was still grappling with their chant. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, driven by something I couldn't explain. As I moved closer, a gust of wind swept through, chilling me to the bone. The girl broke into a run, gliding gracefully between the trees. I followed, urgency overtaking caution. The whispers began again, wild and frantic, growing louder as I drew near. Before long, I found myself standing in another clearing, larger and more open than the first. Moonlight flooded the space, illuminating the area covered in strange symbols etched into the ground. The air felt electric, as if the very atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. That's when I saw them. Figures emerging from the shadows, their faces illuminated under the silvery light. They were the same children from before. They stood in a circle around a dark shape on the ground, their expressions filled with fear and longing. I felt my heart drop. It wasn't just a game. It was a ritual. Before I could turn to flee, I heard the soft giggle again, echoing from behind. Something was amiss, and I was right in the heart of it. I had to escape before whatever had seized them turned its attention on me. But just as I turned, the darkness shifted behind me, and I realized I was no longer alone. The figure stepped forward, illuminated by the moonlight. It was a boy, his face dirt-smudged and wide-eyed, just like the girl. He didn't smile. Instead, he stared at me with a mix of desperation and fear. The whispers intensified, weaving in and out of my thoughts, making it difficult to think straight. "Help us," he shouted, his voice cracking like dry branches. "You have to help us." "What do you want from me?" I gasped, feeling my pulse quicken. I fought the urge to bolt, but the fear in their eyes anchored me in place. "Their guardian is angry," he stammered, glancing nervously towards the dark shape on the ground. "If you don't help us, they'll take more." "Who will take more? What is happening here?" I pressed, my voice rising in panic. "The forgotten," the girl whispered, creeping closer. "They're trapped because of a choice you can choose." Just then, the dark shape twitched, and the circle of children stepped back, their faces awash with fear. The symbols etched into the ground glowed faintly, pulsing like a heart. I looked at the children, their fear reflected in their eyes, and felt my own resolve waver. "What choice?" I asked, though every instinct screamed at me to run. "The locket," the boy replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have to use it." I fumbled with the locket still hanging from my neck, my fingers trembling against the cool metal. "How can this? That doesn't make sense," I shouted, and the words echoed in the stillness of the night. They're waiting, the girl urged, her tone now a mix of sorrow and urgency. You can set them free. My breathing grew frantic. I took a step back, scanning the perimeter of the clearing. Shadows loomed around us, and the air became thick with dread. Every fiber of my being begged me to flee, yet the children's eyes bore into me, pleading, as if my decision would tip the scales. Before I could rationalize my next move, the ground rumbled beneath my feet. I felt a pulse of energy surge through me, connecting me to the symbols beneath. I could hear the soft whispers again, clearer this time, words rushing past like a stream. Choose. 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 What does it mean? I shouted, but the words were drowned out as the ground trembled more violently. The marks lit up bright, each one illuminating a different darkened corner of the clearing. Then, I saw it. A fleeting figure just outside the light, something dark and twisting, watching, waiting. Suddenly a scream erupted from behind me. The children shrieked, their voices raised in terror. Run! Without thinking, I turned to face whatever was coming, dread pooling in my stomach. A shadow flared into life, its form shifting and writhing like smoke in the wind. I had one moment before it lunged. I made a choice. I clasped the locket tightly, feeling its cool metal bite into my palm. And then everything went dark. I blinked, disoriented. The darkness was thick and suffocating, like an endless void that wrapped around me, squeezing out any sense of reality. I wanted to call out, but my voice felt trapped inside, swallowed by the weight of the shadows. Panic surged through me. Had I made the wrong choice? Suddenly a sharp light pierced through the darkness. It hung in the air, glittering like stars. I gasped as the light began to take form, swirling into a shape. It was a door, a wooden one, ancient and covered in intricate carvings. The whispers returned, soft and melodic, brushing against my ears like a gentle wave. Open it, they urged, their voices harmonizing into a chorus. Free us. I stumbled toward the door, my heart racing. I reached for the handle, trembling. What waited beyond? Every instinct warned me to back away, but those children's faces lingered in my mind. Their fear, their hope. With a deep breath, I twisted the handle and pushed the door open. A blinding light erupted from within, forcing me to shield my eyes. When I dared to look, I found myself in a vast, ethereal landscape, glowing under a surreal twilight. Trees stretched far into the sky, their leaves shimmering like silver. A river of shimmering light wound its way through the grass, casting a warm glow around. But the beauty was deceptive. A chill ran through me, the air crackling with tension, as I noticed dark shapes lurking just beyond the trees. The children stood a few paces in front of me, still grounded in fear. Though illuminated by the mystical light, their expressions were grave. You have to choose now, the boy said, his voice echoing through the unsettling silence. With the locket, you can send them back. Or you can join us. Join you? I stammered, my mind racing. What does that even mean? The forgotten must be released, the girl explained, her voice edged with desperation. But it must be a willing choice. This place, it needs souls to thrive. I glanced behind me, the shadows creeping closer almost like a tide. My heart raced, sensing the looming danger. Choices flooded my mind. Could I betray my own freedom to save the children? Could I risk becoming one of them? Then I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. One of the dark shapes from before drew nearer, creeping toward the children like a predator stalking its prey. The creature was twisted, long and disfigured, eyes burning with an eerie hunger. No! I yelled, the words ripping from my throat. You can't take them! I turned to face the shimmering locket again. The light shimmered within it, and suddenly, memories rushed back. A time before shadows, the laughter of a life untouched by fear. I could feel the connection with the symbols beneath me, the choice blazing like fire in my heart. Choose! The whispers beckoned, a cacophony urging action. A rush of resolve filled me as I realized what needed to be done. I held the locket high, ready to make the choice that might save them. But just as I opened my mouth to shout the words, a figure pushed through the darkness behind me. I turned, and my breath caught in my throat. It was the dark shape, alive, horrible, and far too close. "Choose," it hissed, its voice a chilling wind. I stood frozen, every instinct screaming as I faced the monstrous presence that threatened to consume us all. I didn't have time to think. The creature loomed closer, its grotesque form curling and shifting in ways that defied nature. I could feel its breath, a foul, icy fog that cut through the warmth of the glowing landscape. The children shrank back, their faces pale with dread. "Please," the girl cried out. "You have to do it now." I gripped the locket tighter. My thoughts raced, battling a whirlwind of fear and urgency. The whispers rose to a deafening chorus, urging me to act. But in the back of my mind, doubt crept in. What if I made the wrong choice? What if the cost was far greater than I could bear? With a deep breath, I forced my voice to break through the chaos. I choose to send them back." But before the words could fully escape my lips, the creature lunged at me, its clawed hands reaching for my throat. I stumbled back, my instincts taking over as I ducked and rolled to the side, the force of its rush nearly knocking me off my feet. The world spun as I scrambled to my feet. Panic surged, and I could feel the pulse of something ancient and dark in the air around me. "No, focus," I thought. The locket glinted in the light, a beacon amid the madness, and I knew I had to make it work. "Send them back," I shouted, holding the locket to my chest and willing all my courage into the words. "Release them." To my surprise, the locket glowed brighter, the light expanding outward in a shimmering wave. The children gasped, their eyes widening as the glow cast away the shadows momentarily. For a fleeting second, I felt hope surge through me. But the creature was relentless. It snarled, its twisted features contorting into a mask of rage. "You think you can stop this?" it hissed, lunging forward again. I had to act fast. With a surge of desperation, I shouted, "I command you to leave these children alone." The locket vibrated with energy, pulsing in rhythm with my voice. The shadows recoiled slightly, but the creature advanced, its wrath escalating. Then everything shifted. The air thickened and the ground trembled. The locket burst with a radiant light that formed a barrier around me, encasing us all in a cocoon of brilliance. It surged with power, flooding the landscape and pushing the darkness back. "Together," I urged the children, my voice steady despite my fear. "Join me. We can do this." The boys stepped forward, taking the girl's hand. They closed their eyes, faces set with determination. "Now!" they shouted in unison, and the locket's light flared even brighter. Suddenly I felt a surge of energy, a bond forming between us. I could sense their hopes and fears intertwining with mine, and for a moment, it was as if time stood still. Then I saw it. Tendrils of darkness were pulling away, the creature trapped in a whirlwind of light. It screamed, a sound that echoed across the landscape, rattling through my bones. But just as it seemed the darkness would break, I realized that we were still vulnerable. We needed to finalize this connection to protect not only ourselves, but anyone else trapped in this nightmare. "Don't let go," I cried out, tightening my grip around the locket. "We have to push it back." And that's when I saw it. A flicker in the shadows just beyond the light. Another figure was watching, eyes glowing with an eerie brightness. My heart sank. It wasn't just the creature we had to worry about. "Who are you?" I thought as the new threat stepped forward, shrouded in darkness. The looming figure grinned, and a chill crept up my spine. This battle wasn't over yet. The figure emerged from the shadows, its shape both familiar and unknown. I squinted, trying to make sense of the face obscured by darkness. It was like staring into a fogged mirror. A knot formed in my stomach. I could sense it was something deeply dangerous. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice shaky but determined. I couldn't afford to show weakness now. The children beside me bristled with fear, drawing closer together. The figure took a step forward, and the chill in the air intensified. I want what you're trying to protect, it said, its voice smooth and mocking. The children belong to me now. No, I screamed, feeling the locket pulse harder against my chest. You can't take them. They're not yours. It laughed, a sound that sliced through the tension. Oh, but you're mistaken. They are already in my grasp. Before I could respond, the creature began to writhe in the light. The wall we'd created flickered, and I could feel the bond between us weakening. The children gasped as shadows swirled closer, hungry and relentless. Stay with me, I urged them, my heart racing. I focused on the locket, willing it to shine brighter. We need to channel everything we have, but as we tried to strengthen our connection, I noticed it. The figure in the shadows was no longer alone. More shapes began to materialize, each one twisted and grotesque. They shifted like smoke, but I could see their eyes, glimmers of malice lurking beneath the surface. Why are there more of them? I thought, dread settling like lead in my stomach. We'll protect them together, the boy whispered, squeezing the girl's hand tighter. I could tell he was scared, but he was ready to stand firm. The locket surged again, this time responding to our uncertainty. The light pushed back, and I could feel the darkness quaking as we formed a tighter circle. We can do this, I asserted, though doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind. Would it be enough? Suddenly the shadowy figures surged forward, a mass of darkness eager to consume us. I concentrated, focusing everything on the locket. Now, I yelled, a final attempt to banish the encroaching nightmare. The locket erupted in a blinding flash, radiating a force that pushed against the advancing shadows. A cacophony of screams erupted as shadows were torn apart, but just as swiftly, the figure reappeared in front of me, standing against the light. Foolish child, it hissed, this is only the beginning. Then everything went dark. I felt the ground beneath me give way, and I stumbled, the connection to the children unraveling. No, stay close, I cried out, but their voices were swallowed by the darkness. In that terrifying moment, I realized the fight was far from over. I had to find them. I had to protect them. But as I stood there, encased in emptiness, I was paralyzed by an overwhelming sense of loss. That's when I heard it, a low rumbling growl that pulsed through the void. I wasn't alone. Something else was lurking in the darkness, waiting to strike. Panic surged as the growl echoed around me, vibrating in my bones, pulsing with the beat of a sinister heartbeat. I strained to remember the feeling of connection I'd had with the children, holding on to the hope that we could fight together. But now, I felt adrift in a vast emptiness, disconnected from the locket and the light it had once wielded. Where are you? I called out, voice trembling. The shadows whispered around me, taunting me, as if they were alive and relishing my fear. The air felt thick and suffocating, closing in and pressing against my chest. A flicker of light sparked in the distance. Desperation fueled my steps. I stumbled toward it, heart racing with hope and dread in equal measure. The darkness shifted restlessly, closing in around me, pulling me back into its icy embrace. But I pushed forward, gasping in hope that this light might lead me back to the children. As I neared, the light morphed into the opening of a doorway, shimmering like stars against the black. The whispers grew louder, washing over me like waves, drowning out the growls and my own terror. I could hear snippets of voices, some familiar, some faded, calling for help. "Don't leave us," someone shouted. "No," I cried out. "I'm coming." The shadows shrieked in response, a horrific mixture of laughter and anger that froze the blood in my veins. I steeled myself and dashed through the doorway, clutching the locket close to my heart. As I crossed the threshold, a surge of light enveloped me. The world exploded back into existence. I found myself back in the clearing. The children stood before me, silhouettes against the moonlight, looking at me with the same vacant expressions I had seen before. But now, there was something different. Urgency glittered in their eyes. "Quick! This way!" the boy shouted, pointing toward a different path in the woods. I didn't hesitate. I followed him, the girl by my side. The atmosphere felt charged and alive, pulsating with a blend of fear and hope as we ran. The rustling of branches behind us grew louder, the shadows looming once more. Were they still after us? "Stay together," I urged, close enough to hear the soft murmurs of the children. Their tiny feet pattered against the earth as we weaved through the trees, navigating toward... what? An escape? A sanctuary? The ground shook slightly beneath our feet, as if the forest itself was alive, unwelcoming. As I turned a corner, I caught a glimpse of the dark figure lurking at the edge of the trees, its predatory eyes gleaming. My heart plummeted. "It's still here," I panicked, but the children, mirroring my fear, sped up. "We can't stop," the girl shouted. "Keep going." We raced toward the glimmers of light ahead, and suddenly the forest thinned. An open space appeared, glimmering with a warmth sheltered from the shadows. The dark figure watched us from the edge, a sinister grimace across its features. "There!" The boy pointed at a glistening pool of light at the center, a reflection of everything we had fought for. I stopped, feeling the weight of the choice I still had to make. The whispers danced around me, urging me to take the leap, to step forward. With the locket still clutched tightly in my palm, I took a deep breath. "Will this free you?" I asked the children, uncertainty flooding my words. "If you believe," the girl whispered, "we can break the curse." The air around me shimmered as the reckoning loomed. I stepped toward the pool, shadows slithering, even as the children urged me onward. The light pulsed, beckoning us. My heart raced as I held the locket above the surface. "I choose to release you," I shouted, igniting my resolve. The moment I let the locket drop into the pool, everything shifted. The world might have gone silent, but it felt absolutely electric. The light exploded outward, bathing the forest in a tsunami of bright radiance. The shadows writhed and shrieked, the darkness battling against this overwhelming light. The children grasped my hands, anchoring me even as the shadows howled, pulling at me, trying to sever our bond. "Don't let go," I cried, forcing my voice through the tumult. The welcoming warmth enveloped us, pushing back against the darkness. But flickers of doubt gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. What would happen after this? Was it truly over? Would I be left with questions haunting me forever? As the light intensified, the shadows refused to yield. A final roar erupted from the center, a burst of denial aimed at our hopes. Then there came a moment, a jarring silence where whispers faded to a hush, colliding against the brilliance. What loomed before us dissolved in an explosion of smoke, the last remnants of the shadows scattering across the sky like ash. The children's expressions shifted. Relief washed over them, illuminating their faces. We had done it. Yet that overwhelming emptiness lingered, whispering that we were not entirely free. But before I could voice my lingering concerns, the ground began to tremble again. "What does this mean?" I yelled, panic spiking anew as the earth quaked beneath my feet. "Move!" the boy shouted, dragging the girl and me toward a different clearing, one filled with blooming wildflowers, vibrant against the shadow-stained trees. We hadn't won. The truth was written in the urgent tension still thriving in the air, an unsettling calm before a storm yet to come. I glanced back at the remnants of darkness swirling at the edges of the light, unsure if I could ever truly escape, if I would ever fully understand what had happened. That question lingered as we sprinted further into the woods, choices still hanging in the air like specters. I knew there would always be unresolved fears behind me, but my hope was reborn, at least for now. I moved toward the dawn of a new day, though its brightness felt distant, uncertain. Beyond the light, the shadows circled once more, waiting for the moment they could pounce. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if that darkness still lingers, still beckons me back to the mountains. But mostly I try not to think about it.